Welcome back to the second session of this chapter, Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. Welcome to all. Hi, hello, namaste. Last class I had stopped at the development of embryo sac, that is the development of female gametophyte in angiosperms. Let us continue from there. Now, see, this is the stamen. These are microsporangia. These are microspores or pollen grains. Now imagine that this stamen is matured. Similarly, this is carpel, stigma. Now this is ovule. And in this ovule there is an embryo sac here. This is embryo sac. The egg is ready here. This is egg. Now male gametophyte is ready, female gametophyte is ready. Next, what has to happen? The next process that has to happen is pollination. Next is pollination. That means this stamen, the anther lobes will burst out. Okay, the anther lobes will burst out. That is due to the dryness of the endothecium or cell wall layers. The epidermis, endothecium, middle layers, tapetum all get dried up and they get open. Okay, they get open and the pollen grains are released out. All the pollen grains are released out. Now these pollen grains that are released out will be, so that process is called dehiscence. Dehiscence means the anther walls getting split and separating so that the pollen grains are released out. These released pollen grains now will reach the stigma of the female sex organ. These pollen grains will reach the stigma of the female sex organ. Now this process is called pollination. So what is pollination? Pollination is a process where the pollen grains from the stamen of one flower are transferred to the stigma of either the same flower or of the different flower. Right. So this pollination is mainly divided into two types. One is the autogamy, the other is allogamy. Autogamy and allogamy. This is also called self-pollination. This is also called cross-pollination. This is one way of classifying. Another classification is there, that is called chasmogamy, cleistogamy, and these are the two types of self-pollinations, and xenogamy and geitonogamy. This is another type of classification. Okay, xenogamy and geitonogamy. So here chasmogamy means flower will open. The calyx and corolla will open so that the sex organs are exposed and pollination takes place. Cleistogamy means the flower remains closed. Flower remains closed and within the closed condition itself, self-pollination will take place. Okay, so these both will occur in some plants like Commelina. But xenogamy refers to, it is a pollination between the two flowers of two different plants. Xenogamy means the pollination between two flowers of two different plants. So it is perfectly cross-pollination. But geitonogamy means it is the pollination between two flowers of one plant itself. Within a single plant, the pollination takes place between the two flowers. So it's almost similar to the self-pollination only. So genetic difference is variation is perfectly seen in case of xenogamy. So this is another way of classifying the pollinations. Self-pollination means the pollination takes place within the single flower, chasmogamy or cleistogamy. Within the single flower, the pollination will take place. It's a quite simple one. There is no requirement of any agent, mediator. Okay, it happens automatically. But allogamy or cross-pollination is always by using the agents, cross-pollination, because the two flowers are involved in the business. That is why the pollen grains need to be carried to the female sex organ. So that is done or mediated by some of the agents. Okay, so allogamy is facilitated by the pollinators or agents. Pollinators or agents. So which are the pollinators which help in the process of pollination? Which are they? They may be the anemophily, or they may be the hydrophily, or let me give another type of classification. Pollinators may be abiotic pollinators or biotic pollinators. Abiotic pollination are anemophily and hydrophily. Biotic pollination is of many types. Okay, it is particularly, say for example, the entomophily, ornithophily, or chiropterophily, or it may be myrmecophily, or melecophily, etc., etc., etc. So many, based on the type of agents involved, it is of different types. Okay. Now, anemophily refers to wind. The pollination by wind is anemophily. Pollination by water is called hydrophily. So these two are the abiotic pollinators. Biotic pollination is by using the biotic agents. The living organisms will help in the process of pollination. It is entomophily if insects are involved. It is ornithophily if birds are involved. It is chiropterophily if bats are involved. Myrmecophily if ants are involved, ants or termites. Melecophily if snails are involved. Snails are involved. So, still so many are there. The snakes are also associated with the pollination. Naja cobra is associated with the pollination. So, there are so many animals which are associated with the process of pollination. Now, if even, let us take up them one by one. The anemophily. Among the abiotic pollination, anemophily is major. Very few organisms will go for hydrophily. Very few plants go for hydrophily. It is a maximum of 30 species. 30 species which are particularly living in aquatic system are associated with hydrophily. Of course, not all the plants living in water go for hydrophily. Some plants even go for the biotic pollination. Okay, we have a few plants, lily, water lily, it goes for biotic pollination. Anemophily, among the abiotic pollinators, anemophily is main. Majority are pollinated by anemophily. So here the plants show certain adaptations to anemophily because wind helping in the process of pollination. So there is no requirement of any beautification. Hence, what happens here is that the pollens will be very minute and they are lightweight. They are non-sticky and flowers are usually non-attractive, small sized. Then the anthers, the stamens are long, the anthers are you find what is that called, versatile type of anther. Versatile type of anther means it's like this. This is versatile kind of anther where the anthers will keep they shaking on the short filament so that it will be helpful in disseminating the pollen grains. So anthers are versatile. Normally the carpel will have the only one ovule, monocarpellary, maybe having only one ovule. So lots of adaptations will be there. Even in the plants living in water condition also, the flowers are non-attractive, non-scented, and very importantly here, the pollen grains are the spiral shaped. Pollen grains are spiral shaped and they are covered by mucilaginous envelope. Okay, pollen grains are covered by mucilaginous envelope so that mucilage does not get totally, it absorbs the water and sinks down. So it is covered by the mucilaginous sheath. And hydrophily is again of two types. It may be epihydrophily or hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily or hypohydrophily means the pollen grains may be released on the surface of water or pollen grains may be released within the surface of water. Okay, for example, in case of Vallisneria, the pollen grains are released on the surface of water which will be carried by the water current and will involve in the process of fertilization. So that is called epihydrophily. Hypohydrophily means, suppose this is the water surface, the pollen grains are released here under the surface of water and here only the carpel will also be there. So pollination will take place below the water surface. So it is called hypohydrophily. Example is seagrass or also called zostera. Okay, so this kind of adaptation will be there for the process of pollination. Among the biotic pollinators, I mentioned many names, it may be by insects or by birds or by snails, ants, termites, bats, snakes. So many animals are involved in the process of pollination. By the way, why should they involve in pollination? Unless and otherwise there is some, gain. Then nobody has to involve in any business, right? So there should be some gain. So that's called, there is a give and take business between the animals and the flowers. Okay, there is a give and take business between flowers and the animal pollinators. That means there is some offer. There is some offer by the flowers for the pollinators. So which are the offers? One offer is in the form of nectar. That is one offer. Another offer is space. So flowers will provide nectar for pollinators, during which pollination takes place. Or flowers will provide the space for the pollinators to lay eggs or for some other purpose, during which the pollination takes place. Okay, for example, in case of yucca or Amorphophallus, in case of yucca and Amorphophallus, the space is provided by the flowers for the pollinators. So that's called the offer. They will offer something for the pollinators for having done the process of pollination. And even these plants also show, the plants adapted for animal pollination are adapted in different ways. For example, the flowers are attractive in the sense they are colorful, large in size or sometimes small also, and they produce nectars. So they are scented for scent, and pollinators will visit the flower. Okay, and the pollens are sticky. Pollens are sticky in nature. This is very, very important. So automatically when animals visit the flowers, the sticky pollen grains will get stuck to the beak of the birds, or to the antenna of insects, or to the wings of the insects. So many different mechanisms are there. So this is how the flowers are modified or adapted to the process of animal pollination. And even there are so many mechanisms with reference to animal pollination. For example, lever mechanism or trapdoor mechanism. So many mechanisms are there. Just let me introduce the lever mechanism. Lever mechanism is found in case of salvia. A plant called salvia, there is something called lever mechanism, wherein, say for example, suppose this is the flower, there is the stamen here, and carpel will also be there. So the stamen is like this, the anthers are like this. This is filament, this is connective, these are the two anthers. Now what happens is that the insect will come and sit here. Insect sits here so that this bends down, so that the pollen grains can stuck to the bird. So this is called lever mechanism. Lever means seesaw. As the small children play on seesaw like this, the same thing happens even in the case of flowers. So there are the various types of pollinations, right? And sometimes the artificial pollination is also done, that I will take up later. But cross pollination if has to take place. Say for example, now there are two flowers in a, now this is one flower, this is another flower lying side by side in a plant. Okay, there are two flowers, imagine. Now the question arises, why these two flowers should involve in the pollination business. Why not pollination take place here itself? Suppose this is the bisexual flower. Okay, this is the bisexual flower. Why not, though the species is cross-pollinating, why not the self-pollination take place? It can happen, no, because sex organs are very close to each other. So pollination can take place, no. But it doesn't happen. In a cross-pollinating species, even if even if the sex organs are very close to each other, the self-pollination doesn't take place because there is something called the contrivances for cross-pollination. Contrivances for pollination, or it can also be said that it is the barrier for cross-pollination or barriers for self-pollination, contrivances for cross-pollination. Contrivances means the ones who support the process of cross-pollination. Which are they? They are 1. The dicliny, dichogamy, hercogamy, heterostyle, and self-sterility. Hercogamy and self-sterility. So these are the various very popular contrivances for cross-pollination. Dicliny is also called unisexuality. Dicliny is also called unisexuality. Unisexuality means the plants are unisexual. So when the flowers are unisexual, cross-pollination only is the way. For example, papaya plant. Papaya is a unisexual plant, dioecious. Male plant is different, female plant is different, then inevitably the cross-pollination only has to take place. Then dichogamy refers to the maturity of the male and female sex organs at different times. So it may be protandry or it may be protogyny. Protandry and protogyny. Protandry means andrecium, the male sex organ, matures first, then the female sex organ. So stamens are ready, but carpels are not ready. The male human, just for example, male human is matured. He has crossed the 21 years, but female is still 15 years. Can't, legally not allowed. That is called protandry. Protogyny means the female sex organ matures first, then the male. Girl has crossed 21 years, boy is still 15 years. Legally doesn't happen. Legally not allowed. Same thing is this. So stamens ready, carpels not ready. Carpels ready, stamens not ready. So what has to happen in that case? The stamen from one flower has to reach the carpel of the other flower only. There is no other go. Hercogamy means there is some barrier between the stamen and carpel. So it doesn't allow the dusting of the pollen grain in the same flower. Heterostyle means the sex organs are of different length. Sex organs are of different length. 1. It may be the stamen. Let me show like this. See, stamen is too long. Stamen is too long. Carpel is too short in the same flower. The boy is 7 feet long, girl is just 3 feet. it doesn't facilitate, or the stamen is too short and carpel is too long. Look at this. The boy is just 4 feet height, girl is 7 feet height. Again, it doesn't become compatible. Hence, in these two cases are called heterostyly, different length of the sex organs. Self-sterility means it is a genetic mechanism where even if the pollen grains of a flower fall on the stigma of the same flower, the stigma does not allow the germination of pollen grain. So the pollen grain that has fallen here becomes sterile. So it is a genetic mechanism. Okay, it's sterile. Okay, so these are the 5 different contrivances for the process of pollination. Sometimes artificial pollination is done. Which is also called controlled pollination, artificial pollination or controlled pollination. Here what happens, we only select the male sex organ, we only select the female species, and then we only bring the pollination process. So here we follow 2 things. One, the removal of anthers. Okay, the removal of anthers. The other is bagging. Okay, the anthers are removed. Anthers are removed. The other is bagging. What is that? Say for example, particularly this is done if the flower is bisexual. In unisexual flowers this is not required. Even bagging also not required. Okay, and bagging is required, but this is not required. Say for example, this is a bisexual flower and this is the carpel like this. Now what we do is, to avoid the pollination within the same flower, we remove this. Okay, we remove the anthers. So only stamen, carpel will be left out. Now what we do, after the process of pollination, it is covered. Now this is called bagging. It is called bagging. So these are followed in case of the artificial or controlled process of pollination. Anyhow, now imagine that this is the carpel. This is the carpel. Now the pollination has taken place. Imagine this is the pollen grain. Pollination has taken place. Okay, this is pollen grain or male gametophyte. This is carpel. Now this is the ovule and this is the embryo sac. This is egg, female gamete. So the male gametes are here, female gamete is here. So now what has to happen? The male gamete has to enter the embryo sac. The distance is quite long. So male gamete within the pollen grain have to reach the embryo sac, the content of the embryo sac. Then only the fertilization can take place. Then how does the process of fertilization takes place? It occurs by different steps. Let's see them. Now, what happens is that first there is germination of pollen grain. There is germination of pollen grain. So the pollen grain is deposited on the stigma. Now the pollen grain has to germinate. Now what happens is that to do this, first the carpel or stigma will check the compatibility of the pollen grain. Stigma will check the compatibility of the pollen grain. In a simple word to tell, checking the compatibility means suppose this is the female. This female has to identify that this is her own husband. That is compatibility. Suppose this is the carpel of a cashew plant. This pollen grain of mango plant. It is not compatible. It is incompatible. So this cashew pistil has to identify that this is the cashew pollen only. That is called compatibility. So once the compatibility is approved, then germination takes place. What is that germination? Germination means, look at this. This is the pollen grain. This is the pollen grain, exine, intine. There are many germ pores like this. There are many germ pores. Number of germ pores will differ from one species to another species. Based on that, we say unicolpate, bicolpate, tricolpate, like that. If there is only one germ pore, it is unicolpate pollen grain. If there are two germ pores, it is called bicolpate pollen grain. Like that, it varies. Now what happens? See, remember, pollination must have taken place either in the 2-celled stage or in the 3-celled stage, it was told. Now imagine this is in the 2-celled stage. Now this is the tube cell, this is the generative cell with the generative nucleus and tube nucleus respectively. Now what happens is that during the germination, the intine will come out in the form of a tube like this. The intine will come out in the form of a tube. Okay. Now this you call the germ tube. That's called germ tube. And later, as the germ tube is produced, the tube nucleus will migrate to the tip. Tube nucleus will migrate to the tip, and followed by the generative nucleus gets metamorphosed into 2 sperms, and those 2 sperms also enter the tube. So the tube, now the pollen tube or germ tube, which is also called pollen tube, will have a tube nucleus at the tip and 2 sperms. So now what happens here? The pollen tube enters the style. Pollen tube enters the style this way. Now this is called germination. For the germ tube to produce, it needs boron and calcium. Very important. The stigma must have boron and calcium content in it, so that the germination can take place very comfortably. Plus, the temperature requirement also should vary from 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. So at this temperature, with these contents, the pollen grain will germinate very comfortably on the polar stigma. Now what happens? The style has the tissue. This pollen tube will pierce the tissue of the style and enters the ovary. And in the ovary, there is a tissue called obturator. There is a tissue called obturator in the ovary. What is its job? Its job is to facilitate the entry of the pollen tube into the ovule. I repeat, there is a tissue there is a tissue in the ovary called obturator, which guides the pollen tube to enter the ovule. Next, the formation of the pollen tube was first discovered by a scientist called Amici. Okay, pollen tube was for the first time discovered by a scientist called Amici. So that is the first step. Now, second step is the entry of pollen tube into the ovule. Now it has entered the ovary. Now it should enter the ovule. How? See, let me enlarge it. This is one ovule. This is an ovule, megasporangium. The embryo sac is here. This is the egg. So the pollen tube has to enter here. That's why it should enter the ovule first. It happens by three methods, three pathways. One, porogamy, mesogamy, and chalazogamy. Porogamy, mesogamy, and chalazogamy. Okay. Porogamy means the pollen tube entering the ovule through micropyle. Pollen grain, pollen tube entering the entering through the micropyle. That is this way. Mesogamy means entry through integuments. So it is through this way. Chalazogamy means the entry is through chalaza. So it is this way. So it can enter through micropyle or through chalaza or through integuments. Through any pathway, the this one pollen tube can enter the ovule. So that will be guided by obturator. Next, third step is the entry of pollen tube into the embryo sac. So imagine now this is nucellus, this is embryo sac, this is micropyle, this is egg apparatus, these are antipodals, this is the central cell. Now this is nucellus. Okay. Now the pollen tube is here. Now it should enter here into the embryo sac. So that again happens by three different pathways. One, it can enter through one synergid, or it can enter between a synergid and egg, or it can enter between a synergid and embryo sac wall. That means it can enter through a synergid like this, or it can enter between the synergid and the egg, or it can also enter between synergid and the embryo sac wall like this. So by any of the three pathways, it depends upon the species, the entry will be done. But through synergid when it enters, it will be supported by a particular structure called filiform apparatus. Okay. So that means, say for example, let me enlarge here. Suppose this is the embryo sac. This is one synergid, another synergid. This synergid has got a finger-like projection like this, in this way. In this way, there are finger-like projections here. These finger-like projections are called filiform apparatus. They guide the entry of the pollen tube through the synergid into the embryo sac. So imagine the pollen tube is here now. The pollen tube has taken its entry into the embryo sac. Now it is inside the embryo sac. Now once the pollen tube enters the embryo sac, next step is release of male gametes in the embryo sac. Release of male gametes inside the embryo sac. Now, this release of the male gametes into the embryo sac is by, look at this. Now imagine this embryo sac, these are synergids, this is embryo, the pollen tube. Now the sperms are here. Now what happens is that there was a tube nucleus here. Now that tube nucleus degenerates, it disappears, and the release can take place by two methods. One, the tip can burst out. The tip can burst out. So that means, suppose this is the pollen tube, the tip can burst out. So both the gametes are released into the sac. Or it can be by forming two openings. By forming two openings. How is that? Say for example, suppose this is a tube, two openings are created. So one sperm moves from one, another sperm moves from another. So in this way, the two gametes are released into the embryo sac. And finally, the process of double fertilization and triple fusion. This process was discovered by a scientist called Navashin. It was discovered by Navashin. Okay. Now what happens is that, look at this. This is embryo sac. These are synergids. This is egg. This is central cell. Now two sperms are released. This is one sperm. This is another sperm. So two sperms are released into the embryo sac. Now what happens is that, one, the first sperm fuses with egg. First sperm fuses with egg. So this sperm fuses with the egg. And this process is called syngamy. Syngamy. This is the haploid. This is haploid. To produce a zygote which is diploid. Now fate of one sperm is over. Diploid zygote is produced. So now this is called syngamy, which is also called amphimixis. Amphimixis. But there is another sperm. There is second sperm. Now what it does is, it combines with the central cell or secondary nucleus or primary or the secondary nucleus, that is this. This is haploid, this is diploid. Now this is called triple fusion, which will produce something called primary endosperm cell with primary endosperm nucleus. Got it? This is haploid, this is diploid, 1 plus 2 is triploid. So both the sperms are involved in the process of fertilization. This is one fertilization, this is another fertilization. So 1 plus 1 will form double fertilization. 1 plus 1 becomes double fertilization. So syngamy and triple fusion will together produce or will form, will bring about the double fertilization. So which are the events of double fertilization? One is syngamy, other is triple fusion. Very important. Got it? So the double fertilization will produce a diploid zygote and a triploid primary endosperm cell or triploid primary endosperm nucleus. Thus this process is called the double fertilization and triple fusion. Remember, double fertilization and triple fusion are exclusive to angiosperms. Now after fertilization, there are some post fertilization changes taking place. Okay, post fertilization changes taking place. Which are they? One, the ovary becomes a fruit. First, ovule becomes a seed. Second, the integuments become seed coat. The egg becomes zygote, which becomes embryo. The secondary cell or secondary nucleus or central cell develops into primary endosperm cell, which develops into endosperm. Synergids, antipodal cells, all will degenerate, even nucellus, synergids, antipodal cells, all will degenerate. Got it? These are all the various changes that take place immediately following the process of fertilization. Now, let us take up them individually. Nucellus actually gets totally degenerated, but sometimes the small part of nucellus will remain inside the seed. That small remnant of the nucellus inside the seed is called perisperm, which is found in the plants like pepper, beet, etc. Beet, pepper, etc. will show perisperm, remnant of nucellus in the seed, which normally will not be there in other groups of plants or other species of plants. Now fruit is what? Fruit is the matured ovary or fertilized ovary. The wall of the fruit is called pericarp, which encloses the seed. Pericarp is having three layers: epicarp, mesocarp and inner endocarp. Endocarp will immediately enclose the seed. Number of seeds will vary from 1 to many depending upon the species. And this fruit is of many types. Maybe the true fruit, false fruit, the fleshy fruit, dry fruit, or parthenocarpic fruit. So there are many types of fruits. True fruit is what? The fruit that actually has developed from ovary is true fruit. Mango or most of the fruits are tomato, brinjal, capsicum are all true fruits. False fruits are those which have not developed from ovary. Example, the apple, cashew, etc., where they have developed from the thalamus. Fleshy fruit is the one where the seeds are not given out. Fleshy fruits are the ones where seeds are not given out, but seeds will be released only after the degeneration of the fruit. Example, mango, tomato, capsicum, brinjal, chiku, anything. Dry fruit is the one which where the seeds are released out immediately after they get dried up. For example, lady's finger or tamarind or mimosa pudica or the kothambri, all this dry fruits. Parthenocarpic fruit is the one which has developed without the process of fertilization. Directly ovary becomes a fruit. Ovary directly becomes a fruit without fertilization. That is called the parthenocarpic fruit. We have tomato and many other fruits that are the guava fruit, grapefruit are all the parthenocarpic fruits. Not all, parthenocarpics are also there. In addition to this, we can also divide the fruit into simple fruit, complicated fruit and aggregate fruit. That is also there. Simple fruits develop from the Syncarpus gynoecium. Aggregate fruits develop from the Apocarpus gynoecium. Complex fruits develop from the entire inflorescence. For example, jackfruit, ananas, fig, etc. Syconas, soroses are all the complex fruits. Okay, that is one. Next, seeds can also be, what is a seed? The matured ovule or fertilized ovule is called seed. And this seed will have testa outer layer, tegmen the inner layer enclosing the endocarp, endosperm, embryo and many more, cotyledons, etc. This seed can be divided into monocot seed and dicot seed. Two cotyledons, one cotyledon. Can also be divided into endospermic seed and non-endospermic seed, which is also called albuminous seed and exalbuminous seed. So many varieties are there. Why it is called endospermic seed? Because the endosperm will remain within the fruit, within the seed even after the maturity of the embryo. Here, endosperm will not be there after the maturity of the embryo. That means endosperm will get exhausted. Okay. You can quote many examples for that. So, I am not going into all those details now. Integuments develop into seed coat, that is done. Now, coming to this. Before that, let me complete this endosperm. See, this was embryo sac. Now, this was the ovule. This was embryo sac. This was nucellus. Thus, this nucellus will get degenerated. Embryo sac wall will also get degenerated, leaving behind only the embryo, the zygote, and the primary endosperm cell. Only two things will remain after fertilization. Now, this is zygote. Now, this is zygote, single celled zygote develops into embryo. Now, this is single celled endosperm, primary endosperm cell. Now, this primary endosperm cell, nucleus of the primary endosperm cell undergo repeated mitotic divisions and develop into cell endosperm. And it has got three stages in the development, like they are what is that? Cellular endosperm, and we have the liquid endosperm, where only multinucleated stage is there and another mid stage is there. So actually there are three stages. What is that? See, actually now this is primary endosperm cell. Now this primary endosperm nucleus undergoes multiplication, mitosis, producing lots of nuclei like this. So this is in the liquid stage. Then there is a transformation stage. Some cells will develop walls around them like this, others remain. So intermediary stage. Then finally cellular stage, where all the nuclei get enclosed within the cell wall like this. like this. Okay. So these are the 3 stages. This is liquid endosperm. This is, there is a name for that, and this is cellular endosperm. Tender coconut is this. Dry coconut is this. What the white kernel you have, no? It is this. If you drink this, you get the liquid endosperm as well as the cellular endosperm, both. Okay. Next. So now look at this. This entire space is filled by the endosperm. That is, now I got it. Halobial endosperm. Halobial endosperm, cellular endosperm, and liquid free nuclear endosperm. These are the 3 stages: free nuclear, halobial, cellular. Now the matured seed will have the endosperm like this. At one end there will be embryo. So now what happens is that the zygote will be developed into embryo. So I'll rub this. Imagine there is a zygote here. Zygote is always single celled with the diploid nucleus, and now this zygote, the initial stages of embryonic development is the same in almost monocots and dicots. All the initial stages are same. Okay. And see how it happens is that first this zygote undergoes a transverse division, and this is called suspensor cell. This is called the embryonal cell. Embryonal cell. Now later the suspensor cell will undergo repeated divisions like this, repeated transverse divisions like this, and it enlarges. Now this is suspensor, many say cell suspensor. So later this terminal cell of the suspensor enlarges and it becomes like this. Like this. Now this is called haustorium, the terminal cell of the suspensor, and this is multicellular suspensor, stalk-like structure. Now this develops into embryo. Now this is small size, so it is called proembryo. Then it develops into globular embryo. Globular embryo. Then it grows into heart-shaped embryo. So this is called heart-shaped embryo. Again, there will be many cells in embryo. The continuous mitosis will take place in this embryonic structure. Like this. This is heart-shaped embryo. Now, this end, this is called hypophysis. This end is called epiphysis. Hypophysis is associated with the radicle. Epiphysis is associated with the plumule. It is associated with the plumule. And finally, this heart-shaped embryo will get matured with the 2 cotyledons like this. Now you get 2 cotyledons, matured embryo, radicle here, plumule here, and finally this haustorium will absorb the most nutrients from the endosperm. Okay, and always this is present towards micropylar end, and the haustorium will be present towards the chalazal end. So this is how the development of embryo takes place. And in the monocots, the two cotyledons are not formed. Instead, only one will grow into cotyledon, other will grow into epiblast. Understood? So this is how the embryonic development takes place in case of dicots and monocots. Next, sometimes the parthenocarpy we have studied. Parthenocarpy is nothing but the condition where the ovary directly develops into fruit without fertilization. Sometimes you can also see apomixis. Apomixis, where the seed, the ovule develops into seed without fertilization. Okay, ovule can develop into seed without fertilization. So that can also be there in some cases. So this apomixis is of different types. The apomixis is of different types. They are three types are there mainly. One is agamospermy, the other is apogamy, the other is vegetative apomixis. Okay, and this agamospermy is again of three types. One, adventive embryony, diplospory, and the apospory. Diplospory and apospory. What is the difference? Now, adventive embryony means the embryo will develop from nucellus or integument. Embryo develops from nucellus or integument. See, megaspore and all not produced. Directly the nucellar cells, one of the nucellar cells or one of the integument cells will directly develop into the diploid embryo. Skipped. That is called adventive embryony. Diplospory means the megaspore mother cell directly develops into embryo sac. So there will be no meiosis here. So here also embryo sac is diploid, the embryo is diploid, here embryo sac is diploid. That is the difference. This is embryo diploid, here embryo sac is diploid. In apospory, the gametophyte, the female gametophyte is directly produced from the cells of nucellus or integuments. Cells of nucellus or integuments. Now, look at the difference between this and this. Here embryo is directly produced in adventive embryony. Here gametophyte is, that is embryo sac is produced. Here also embryo sac is produced. But MMC, megaspore mother cell, doesn't undergo meiosis. So no functional megaspore is produced directly into embryo sac. But here it is produced, but meiosis is not there. The nucellus directly becomes female gametophyte. Here nucellus directly becoming embryo, here nucellus directly becoming female gametophyte. So here the gametophyte is diploid, here embryo is diploid, here embryo sac again gametophyte is diploid. That is the difference. Okay, next. Apogamy means the embryo is developed from synergids. Embryos is developed from synergids. Embryo sac has got embryo sac has got synergids, antipodals, secondary cell, egg, etc. Normal process is that the egg will be fertilized by sperm. Here it doesn't happen. Here the synergid, monohaploid synergid directly becomes embryo. Okay, synergids directly becoming embryo, no fertilization. Synergids directly become embryo without fertilization. Here you will get some vegetative structures like bulbils or buds that directly grow into a new plant. That's called vegetative apomixis. Sometimes in the normal condition also, a normal seed will show polyembryony. A normal seed will also show polyembryony. So what is that polyembryony? That is one seed having many embryos. One seed having many embryos. This is called polyembryony. Is that fine? So these are the major points of the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Now referring to these in and around, you only collect other details and you can develop the synopsis. Okay, thank you, all the best.